David Bennett.
The bill is the Education Restoration of Democracy to University Council's Amendment Bill in the name of Mr David Cunliffe. Now, the bill seeks to backtrack reforms that have been in the previous Education Amendment Bill number 2 around governance changes in this area, and especially seeks to reinstate the previous requirements around student representation. Now, I don't think anybody in this House would deny the importance of the student body in regard to tertiary institutions, as also the academic bodies. But also there are other interested parties as well, and the government is one of those interested parties, is a big funder of those institutions, and as a community also has a role to play as well, because the community wants to see a strong institution in their area. And when it comes to looking at the council and the board, it shouldn't just be a matter of, as the opposition are seeking in this case, to appoint students or the tertiary sector people or whatever mantra they use for that to determine the success of someone on the board. I think we need to take a more objective approach and look at what good governance generally is. And I think the speech of Paul Foster-Bell was an excellent speech, in which he detailed through a number of boards and basically bodies that runs institutions in the tertiary sector overseas. And it was very obvious from those examples that he gave that there was a predominance of small boards and smaller than what is being intended in this bill. This bill intends to reinstate the size from 12 to 20 members, and as opposed to the 8 to 12 that it is changed to now in the current legislation. So when we look at those overseas examples, they were definitely in the realm of the lower number, and they showed to be most effective for those large institutions that have very strong academic records. When we also look at the corporate sector, there's always been a movement to lower board sizes in that area as well. And that's a justification because they look at the skills and the mix of skills that they've got rather than necessarily the size as determining the success of an organisation. And again, Mr Paul Foster-Bell gave some very good examples of some very big organisations in the corporate sector that have quite small boards and are seen as very effective organisations and companies that are able to deliver for their shareholders and also for their communities. So, Mr Speaker, this bill comes from a philosophical point of view from the Labor Party, of course, and supported by the Green Party, obviously, in their last speech. There are a few examples in that Green Party speech which a few facts that weren't actually correct. When you look at democracy, as the member previously said, that gives some kind of expectation there would be an election for all board members on a university council, which is not how it worked previously and not the intention of the Labor bill either. It's not like something like the Parliament, for example, where you have a general election. These are appointed in many cases, and so there is not that democracy as the Green Party tried to indicate of having election by peers, because that is not the case under the bill that's been proposed. Also, the government doesn't direct what happens with the student levy. The student levy goes to the student institution itself. So the Green Party is not correct in saying that. The universities are determining that they might wish to have a student levy of their own account at this time, but that is something that they have to determine, and the board that's there at this time will have to determine that. So it's not the case that the government determines what the student levy is, as that member tried to present. No, that is not the case. The member should actually go and investigate what actually happens at universities and sees what happens with student levies and student boards. But that would be too much for the Green Party to do in this House. So, no, it's just telling the truth, mate. That's how it works. So, with the universities themselves, there hasn't been a great movement for a change in the legislation. There hasn't been something that has been shown to be ineffective. And if we look at the polytech sector, it has had smaller boards for a number of years now, and they have proven to be very effective.
Order. The member's time has expired.
Okay.